Hello, and welcome to the Travel Unpacked podcast. If you love travel and you like hearing stories and opinions about travel, then you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Ashley Newton, and here we are going to unpack all things travel from the silly to the serious and everywhere in between. And today we're actually going to unpack a serious topic. I know, buckle in. And here to join me on the show is my good friend, fellow travel enthusiast, and I would say a travel disaster survivor, Rachel Jamison. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So if you didn't already guess, what we're talking about today is when your travel does not go as planned, which I think is everybody's biggest fear, is you put all of this time and effort and planning into a trip and then something happens.
Definitely.
So I think we have to start by just getting it out there. What is a travel fail? What is a mishap? What's a disaster? There's so many different levels of things that this could be.
Definitely.
So what comes to your mind? What's the minimum sort of thing that needs to happen for you to be like, that was a fail?
I mean, I think there's, like you kind of said, all sorts of levels of fails. It could be something as minor as missing your flight to something as major as injuring yourself or having some other sort of major catastrophe happen. So I think it's definitely a wide range. For me, I would say mine was a little more on the extreme side of things.
I would too. And I'm really excited for you to tell this story because it's one of those stories that just almost seems unbelievable in a way. And I would say it's definitely more on the disaster spectrum, it's where most stuff is more just a fail, an inconvenience. And that's sort of how I feel about flight delays and all of that just sort of comes in the risk of travel.
Totally.
You're just gonna face stuff like that. And, I think the same thing too when you see those people who complain when they get to their hotel room or their cruise cabin and they're like, this doesn't look exactly like the pictures. Is that an actual problem though?
Right.
I guess maybe it depends on how much you spent.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think maybe fails are oftentimes more recoverable from, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Missing your flight or, a scheduling mishap at your hotel or something.
Yeah.
As opposed to a disaster.
Right. It's an inconvenience.
Yeah, an inconvenience versus a trip ender.
Yes.
Of deal.
So I have definitely what I would consider then a travel fail. Honestly, it's not even what I think of when I look back on this trip. It's just when I knew we were going to be talking about this, I thought about my experiences. And honestly, I've been really lucky. Most of my travel, it goes smoothly and you just come back with fun memories. Mm-hmm. But I have one story of when I was in college and, many years ago now. So it's actually a funny story because my grandma won this trip through the local newspaper. Mm-hmm. And she submitted a photo and she won the photo contest. So then she got 2 tickets or passes, I don't know, to an all-inclusive. Mm-hmm. And she, being the very generous person that she is, extended it to my whole family. So me, my grandma, my mother, my brother, and sister all went down to Mexico and we were all having a great time. And I want to say that it was the last day. And well, thank goodness though.
Almost made it through.
And we wanted to play ping pong of all things. We're let's play some ping pong by the beach. How fun would that be?
It does sound fun.
I know. Honestly, even now, I would do it all again. No regrets. I go to get the equipment because it's not just out. You have to go find it. And then I'm coming back and I'm going down these stone steps. I know.
Always a recipe for disaster.
I know. And of course, my hands are full with the very important ping pong balls and ping pong paddles. Mm-hmm. So then I just wipe out. And I mean Home Alone, full style, legs over my head, wipe out.
And the stairs?
Yes. Oof. Now, luckily, there was 4 stairs, so it wasn't
a huge stair, bumping you on the way down, right?
No, so you just sit there for a second, and you're well, number one, you're embarrassed. You're
Sure.
I just wiped out. This
Everyone
is not.
Saw.
Yeah, and my family is just staring at me, so I'm cool.
Great.
Yeah, and then after that, it's a bit of a blur, I'll be honest with you, because it was a while ago now, and I tend to just, push those sorts of things from my memory, but I do remember going to the bar and asking them to make me an ice pack. So they're just like filling it up with ice, and I've got it, and I'm just trying, because like it was literally like my tailbone took the whole brunt of the fall. So I'm just trying to ice it, and then the reason I think that was the last day is my next memory is getting on the plane.
Oof. That must have been an uncomfortable ride.
Well, like, if you've ever hurt your back, if you've ever fallen at all, like, you know how hard it is to get comfortable at home.
Let alone in, like, the most
straight
up unforgiving chair of all time for hours.
Literally. So, like, I just remember sitting there, and if you're watching on YouTube, like, sort of like this, like lifting myself out so no pressure's on like my tailbone.
Sure.
And like I just wanted to cry, but you can't be that girl on the plane that's just like losing it the whole time.
Totally.
Like,
you should have gotten a neck pillow and just sat on it.
I should have done anything other than what I did, honestly, but I just didn't want to like well, and I just kind of felt like I was bringing everybody's mood down, so I'm like
ruin the trip.
Yeah, so I just push through. But then I go home, and at this time, you know, I'm in school, so it's right back to class, right back to work, right
walking
back to
everywhere.
Exactly. So you remember where my off-campus apartment was. It's not a long walk, but it's not short.
At least 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it's like uphill or downhill. There are hills.
Both.
There are hills all over this campus. So then I do this for like a week, going back and forth to school and then to work. And at the time, you know, I worked at the gas station.
You were standing like the whole time.
Yes. So also, if you're listening and you are currently or a previous gas station employee, let me just say thank you. And I hope you have a good day, because I love you, and that's it.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, we're all in this together forever. But then I finally, and you know me, like, I hate going to the doctors. Like, I don't do anything like that. Yeah. And I'm finally pushed to the point where I go to, like, the services on campus.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I get there, and I think they even did my x-ray there. Which I
think that they did have x-rays there, actually.
Yeah, because I remember being surprised. This is why we're friends. Like, but I remember being surprised. And then he took the x-ray and he was like, well, the reason you're in pain is you actually twisted your coccyx. Like, it's been out of place this whole time. So then he, like, puts it back in place, you know?
Eesh.
Yeah.
Eesh. Was it, like, relief instantly, though?
It was sore from being, like, adjusted, but literally I would say by that evening. And I felt so stupid because I was just like...
I could have done this days ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But, like, overall, I feel like that is the worst, like, travel mishap that I've had to deal with. And then, like I said, when I look back on this trip, I don't even think of that right away. Like, it's so far down. But I know that is not the case for you. I know that. So, and all I really remember about this, because we were friends when she experienced this, and I just remember how excited you were to be going on the trip.
I was.
So take us there, Rachel.
So I think I was maybe 18. No, it had to be 19. Anyways, I was 19, and I had volunteered previously with an organization called Amigos de las Americas, which is all about cultural immersion, community initiatives, working with youth in other countries. So I had been in Paraguay previously when I was 16 for about 6 weeks, and I was like, that was awesome. I want to do it again. So I decided I want to go to Peru. It's going to be great. I'm going to see Machu Picchu. It's going to be fantastic. I've always been like really into just kind of the history and the culture there. So I was super excited. It was like checking a place off my list. So, I pack everything that I need into this giant backpack, and I'm going to be there for 8 weeks. So I'm mentally prepping everything that I need. So I get to Peru. I'm in Cusco at this point, and we are there for a few days doing what they call briefing, just kind of learning more about the culture, getting to know the other volunteers.
Because you stayed with a host family when you were down there. Yeah. So, okay.
So this was prior to that.
Okay.
So you all come together with all the volunteers first, kind of learn a few things about, like, there's an indigenous language. There's, a lot of different things. You're at a really high altitude, so it takes some time to acclimate to that. So,
ooh, yeah,
there were a lot of different things going on. So it was really just to help us kind of acclimate to being in the country before we went off to our more rural communities. So, mind you, I don't know anyone there. It is...
You didn't even know anybody, like, in your group?
No.
Okay.
I did not know anyone. So I was the only one from, like, my chapter that went to Peru. So there was no one that I knew. Everyone was from all across the country. We're all, like, college age, high school age volunteers. And anyways, I get paired up with my partner, and we are sent off to this very rural village in Peru. Like, it took us maybe an hour to get there, and it was just, like, around mountains. Like, you're going around the turns, someone's honking to make sure that, like, because it's, like, a one-lane, like, space.
I just find those so stressful. Even when I'm not driving, I'm just like, are we going to be okay?
I was not sure. But obviously the drivers were super capable.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's like going to the store. It's nothing.
I would never do it. I would never drive it, but super car sick, so...
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Love that.
Lots of
so
twists,
fun.
Lots of turns. So, we'll say...
And how long was the trip scheduled
to be? 8 weeks, and it was supposed to, like, culminate in, like, debriefing at Machu Picchu, which I was, like, so
amazing.
Stoked for.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's gonna be the best. And so maybe I've been there for 5 or 7 days at this point. So I go from my host family's house. Like I said, this is super rural, so there's, like, very limited electricity.
Mm-hmm.
There are no toilets. There's, like, a hole in the ground, like a cement slab, and it's got, like, a little shack over it.
That's an experience in and of itself right there.
There's no showers. The water's not potable, so you have to purify it. It's just a very different environment, and you're dealing with the altitude, so... My host family was on one side of the community. The other volunteers' host family was kind of on the other side of the community. So we were going to go meet up and just kind of chill at her host family's house. So walking through the community, to get to her house, you had to, like, kind of jump over a small stream. So I did that, and then I'm kind of there. And so the sun was about to go down maybe in, like, an hour or so. So we're like, all right, we're kind of done with our work for the day. Let's just, like, play with her host siblings, mess around a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're like, let's play the worldwide game of Duck, Duck, Goose, right?
Now, did they know the game?
They did.
Awesome. So it is the worldwide game.
Pato Gonzo in Spanish.
That's awesome.
And, yeah, so in Paraguay, there were kids that were familiar with it. In Peru, I'm pretty sure that they were familiar with it, too. If not, it's a pretty basic game.
Yeah, you can pick it up.
So we played for a little bit. It's Pato, and then they tag me and I'm Gonzo. I'm the goose. So I have to get up and run around. So I do it. It's a pretty small circle. There's only, like, 3 of us, maybe 4. So I'm running around the circle, and I happen to just hit this, like, divot in the ground in the perfect place on my foot. And the bone on, like, the left side of my left foot just just splinters. The x-ray, it looks like this, like a
my God.
triangle missing. So I'd broken bones before because I'm a pretty accident prone person.
Same.
Broke my arm riding a bike, and I broke my thumb walking downstairs. So if that tells you anything about me as a person, so I had broken bones before, so I was pretty familiar with what it felt like. I feel like my foot kind of went numb right away.
But you knew that you were in trouble.
I knew I was in trouble because I heard it. I heard it pop, and I was like, oh no, that's not good. And so it starts, I can't put any weight on it, and that's how I also know, like, oh no.
Well, and you walked to get to your destination.
I walked there, and I hopped over a river.
Yes.
And most of the houses, the way they were set up is, like, the first floor was kind of just like a common area, and then there'd be a ladder on the outside that would take you up to the second floor where the bedrooms were. So I had to, like, climb a ladder to get to my sleeping quarters at that point in time. And my host family, or my partner's host family's house, was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said earlier, sun is going down. My foot is swelling. I'm sitting there just like, it's fine. But I know something is definitely wrong.
Yeah.
So the organization that I was with, they didn't allow us to travel at night for safety reasons.
Okay.
So sun is already too far down. There's no getting out of there that night. I am in the community for the night.
And at this point, are you like pretty sure that your foot is broken?
I'm pretty positive it's broken.
And you're just like, I gotta sleep somehow?
Yeah, I gotta wait it out until the next
gosh.
day, because we're also so rural that you have to like call a taxi to come to your community, and that takes time.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah, there's like one phone in the community. It was at like the general store that was like, so anyways, this happens. The other volunteer in the community is like, oh my God, what is going on? Because it's just me and her, you know?
Yeah.
And so she runs to the general store, because there's like an emergency plan that activates like if something happens, and to kick it off.
Well, that's good that was at least in place, so you guys weren't just like, what do we do?
They called it like a calm plan, and it was printed on a piece of paper that we had to keep with us at all times, and it was like, this is step 1, and then this person contacts this person. It was like
that's
very
smart,
well planned.
yeah.
So step 1 was to use the community phone to call our supervisor. Each group had a supervisor. They would come and check in on us. You know, they looked after us, all those things. So she calls the supervisor. Supervisor's like, yeah, you gotta wait. You gotta wait till tomorrow. And I'm like, cool, great.
Okay.
So I am not able to make it back to my host family's house because I cannot walk. Yeah. And I'm hopping around.
Are you able to like
everywhere.
even tell them like that you're not gonna be there?
I had someone else go tell them.
Okay.
Because I couldn't. But so we were like, okay, go let them know what's going on. And I stayed at the other volunteers' host family's house that night. So a lot of it is blurry. I remember having to climb the ladder to get like upstairs to like where the bed was, and like just scooting on my butt, like up,
my God,
like with my good foot, you know. Getting up there, I remember sitting in the bed and looking at my foot, and it is just huge. It is like ballooning. You could see the bruising starting.
Well, and at least,
like, oh no.
Like you had youth on your side at the time. Could you imagine
God.
trying to do this at 30, 31 years
No,
old?
dude.
Like, no. With 2 good feet, I'd probably be like, a ladder. My gosh.
Yep. And so the worst thing was having to go to the bathroom in the meantime, because there are no toilets.
Right.
So pretty much it's just like this really small shelter, like I said, over like a concrete pad with like a hole in it. So I'm trying to like balance and hold myself up while I like squat without using one foot to like use the bathroom while I'm still there. So that, I don't know how I did it. Not well, but good enough to get
that's
by.
Incredible.
And I had to like get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I had like some bad stomach stuff going on. Like I said, the water it has to be purified, and it takes some getting used to, so I was not feeling good.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, I was like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And my host mom, the other volunteer's host mom was like, don't even worry about like going in the latrine, just go behind the house. Like, don't even worry about it.
Thank you. Which is funny to be so thankful for somebody to be like, just go behind the house. Yep. But you're like, that's amazing. Like, yes, thank you.
Definitely. They were super nice. I mean, they were taking as good of care of me as they could have, for sure.
I mean, that's wonderful. You have to imagine that's stressful for them as well, because
totally.
They're like just watching you be in pain.
Totally.
So the morning comes.
I'm like, okay, we're gonna go to the hospital in Cusco. That's like the closest major city, and that has like a hospital that would kind of like be on the same scale as like we would have, you know, in the United States. So we're waiting. The taxi finally gets there. I honestly don't think I even had like any of my stuff with me, like not even a change of clothes.
Yeah, you're not even worried about that right now.
Was on my person the day before is what is still on me. And so in order to get to where the taxi is, it's like, I don't know, maybe not that far, like a 1-minute walk and then like slightly up the hill, but like I can't do it.
Might as well be miles.
I can't put any weight on my foot. So I'm like hopping on one foot.
Well, and have you taken anything at this point, like an Advil or anything?
It's possible,
but nothing. I
honestly don't remember.
Of substance, yeah.
Probably, because like we always carried that stuff with us, you know, because we were going to be there for 8 weeks. You're going to get a headache. So in order to get to the taxi, I have like the other volunteer's host dad under one arm, the other volunteer under the other arm, and then the taxi driver is carrying my feet to put me into the back of the taxi so they could take me to Cusco.
Well, and knowing you, I feel like this isn't exactly your idea of like, oh, this is fun.
No.
Like, yeah.
But I was like grateful. I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So we finally get to Cusco. They take me to a hospital. I don't remember which one.
So is there somebody from like the organization that you were with sort of handling this part, sort of?
Yeah, so at this time, like, they've already, like, let my parents know. They've already told, like, the national office in the U.S. Like, everyone knows.
Yeah, but you're not just trying to, like, navigate this hospital by yourself or anything.
Like, the supervisor, like, came and, like, got
That's
me,
one, like, really shining grace, I think.
They did a fantastic job managing the whole thing. It was really incredible. So, I'm at the hospital. I see this doctor. He's, like, this, like, hot, younger Peruvian dude that, like, wears, like, this leather jacket and has, like, a motorcycle helmet with him at all times. And he speaks English, so it's, like, cool, you know?
Yeah.
I spoke Spanish, but it's still pretty overwhelming, and then medical stuff is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't exactly learn those vocab words on your way down. Yeah.
So it was nice. So they, he looks at my foot and he's like, well, there's bruising, which means there's blood, which means something's broken. And I was like, what? No.
You're mistaken.
No. So they take me to get x-rays, and the x-rays come back and they're showing it to me. And like I said earlier, it's like just a split like this, and there's like a bunch of little bone shards in there. Like, it's a mess. It's a whole mess. And so I find out that because of the location it's in and because of how it's broken, I'm going to have to get surgery to put everything back together again. Apparently, if I didn't, and they had to, like, put screws in, and if I didn't, it would have just never gone back together because the tendon would have been, like, pulling on it or something. So, anyways, I now know that I will be getting surgery in Peru, super far away from my family and anyone that I know. So I go to my hospital room, you know, I'm chilling, watching movies in Spanish. I'm pretty sure I watched The Green Mile before surgery. I have, like, a really distinct memory of that. And, you know, I'm sitting there just, like, so emotional. It's such a beautiful movie. But, so I'm sitting, I'm waiting, like, a nurse comes and she, like, cleans my feet. And, they're, like, prepping me for surgery and, like, shaving my like foot for some reason. I don't really have hair there, but yeah, better safe than sorry.
Yeah,
you know?
Why not?
So that's all fine and great. I've had surgery on a bone before when I broke my arm when I was younger, so I was like, I've done this before, no big deal.
Yeah,
they're gonna put me under, I won't even know, and I'll wake up and it'll all be done.
I mean, I'd be terrified to get surgery by myself in a country that I've never been in. Like, I'd just be so scared.
Thankfully, I had, like, gone through a surgery like that before. Otherwise, I think I would have been way more freaked out by the whole thing. But so at that time, I'm like, I'm cool, you know? At that point, I want to stay in Peru after I get my foot
at this point, you're thinking,
at this point,
I'll be okay.
I'll get surgery and I'll just go back out there. I'll just go back out.
It does not go that way.
It does not, because believe it or not, the mountains of Peru are not the best place for crows. But
the things you learn.
So at that point, I'm like, oh, it'll be fine, you know, quick and easy. I'll be back 2 days from now.
Yeah.
I was wrong. So anyways, they get me all prepped for surgery. They're taking me down. I'm, like, in the operating room. One of the supervisors is with me this whole time, even in the operating room. And they're, like, communicating with the doctor on staff in the U.S., like, checking every medication they're giving me. Every week, like, the whole shebang.
It's, like, better healthcare than I get now.
That part was really nice, because I didn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like, okay. So I'm on the operating table. Like I said earlier, like, I do speak Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish. But, didn't know all the medical words, but I did hear them say a word that I thought I recognized, and it was very confusing to me. And they said, epidural. And I went, that sounds kind of like epidural. So I find out, while I'm laying on the table in the operating room, that I am not going to be going to sleep for this surgery. No, they cannot put me under because we are at too high of an altitude, and there's a risk I would never wake up. So I find out I'm going to be getting local anesthetic and an epidural. And I find that out while I'm on the operating room. So I'm losing it. I'm like, what did you just say? Like, no way. The supervisor's freaking out. She's calling the doctor in the US. Like, what do we do? Anyways, so doctor in the US is like, yeah, that's the only way. Did not see that one coming. I really thought I was going to just be under and it would be fine. So I am freaking out and they're like, calm down. And I'm like, no. And so they give me something.
How dare you tell me to calm down right now? Are you out of your mind?
I was losing it. So I'm like an anxious person in general. So at that point, I just hit my breaking point. Yeah. I'm like, this is too much. I can't. So they give me something to calm me down. Don't know what it was, but I like felt it going in, and it was like all just like cool. I was like, okay, whatever.
Greeted it like an old friend.
I don't know what it was, but it was great. And so they sit me up and they're like, all right, we're going to numb your back. So like I kind of feel them do it, but I'm like starting to get really out of it from whatever they gave me at this point. So they numb it and then I just feel pressure as they like put the epidural like in. And then I don't remember that much after that. I was kind of in like a twilight state. So I wasn't fully out of it, but I wasn't fully with it either.
Yeah.
I don't really remember anything, but after the fact, my supervisor told me I woke up at one point and screamed, I can feel everything. I have no recollection of that. Thank God. I hope my brain just keeps that blocked off for the rest of my life because I don't want to remember.
Just like imagine being your supervisor though in that moment and having you shoot up and basically like that's a terror. That's a nightmare.
Definitely.
Like how do I save you?
Yes.
Like oh my gosh.
I don't remember it at all. The only thing I remember is like being rolled back into my hotel room. I remember like seeing myself go through the doorway and then I don't really remember anything until the next day. So because of the invasiveness, I guess, of the procedure, my foot is way too swollen to put it in a cast. Yeah. So I have to stay in the hospital until the swelling goes down and they can put a cast on it. So I'm kind of just trapped in my hospital bed. I really can't move around. I have not showered or brushed my teeth or anything. You know, I just felt
I feel like that's the sort of thing you don't think about, but like that you definitely remember, like how you felt in that moment, just like
just
gross. A layer of
and just like uncomfortable. And so they had like almost like a little like bird cage thing over my leg so that like the blankets didn't weigh on it and didn't touch it, which was nice, but also just like super cumbersome and it was a mess. So days go by and the swelling still hasn't gone down. So I've just been like trapped in bed the whole time essentially. So I start having major back issues because I haven't been able to move at all. I've been bedridden completely. So I start having this really, really bad pain in my back. And so they try giving me lidocaine patches. That doesn't help. They give me like some muscle relaxant and that like helps a little bit. So right now I'm on a concoction of antibiotics because they had to put really long screws into my foot. And there's like a big risk for infection because it goes right into the bone. So if something gets in it, that's then
that's in the bone now. That's a problem.
No bueno. Not what you want. So I'm on a ton of antibiotics. I'm on muscle relaxers. I'm on painkillers. Just a concoction of different things. And I really don't remember a ton from that time. The one plus of that hospital room,
luxury.
That hospital room is one of the walls was completely windows and it just looked over the city of Cusco because it was at like a pretty high floor.
See,
it was beautiful.
Is that fun or is it just mocking you?
I mean, it was nice to have something to look at, you know, but it was a little bit of both, I would say. Yeah. So finally the swelling goes down enough that they can put it in a cast. The cast there was like a plaster cast. It's not like the same wrap that we use here. So it was definitely old school. I would say the hospital in general was like, I got very good care. When I got back to the US, they were like, yeah, they did a really good job. Things are just like a little old school, I would say, like a few years behind. Like the medication vials were like still the glass ones where you like break the top off. And,
that's kind of like cool.
It was cool. And the IV thing like didn't have like any like electrical stuff. It was like all mechanical, you know what I mean? So it was the same stuff, just like a little.
So now, when I think of this story, at one point I swear there's a point where you have like an allergic or like you get sick from medication. Is that when you get back in the US?
No. Well, yes and no.
Oh.
So they put my plaster cast on. I'm like, yay, I can leave.
And at this point, you know you're going home.
At this point, I know I'm going home.
Okay.
They've already told me they're like, the risk of infection is way too great. Like, if you go back out into your rural community and get dirt in this,
gotcha,
you're going to be screwed.
Yeah.
And there was a really big risk of me re-injuring myself and then a really big risk of infection. So they were like, you cannot. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also very sad because I really wanted to see Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
Like, that... You remember that episode of, like, the Wild Thornberries with Machu Picchu? I think that's what inspired it all. But
I love that.
Yeah. So I, now in the interim, like, they're booking me flights to go home. I'm gonna have to travel home all by myself, which is a whole new thing. But they take me to, like, what they call staff house, which is, like, where all the supervisors stay when they're not, like, doing rounds in the community and stuff. So it was, like, in the city of Cusco. So I get there, and I'm there for a night, and then the next day is my birthday.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that!
So I'm in my plaster cast, I'm on crutches, there are no heating pads, my back's still killing me, so I got one of those hot water bags, so I'd have to keep filling it up with boiling water like a million times a day. They made me a little birthday cake. It was cute. So we had dinner, I ate the birthday cake that night. The withdrawal from all of the medications, because they didn't wean me off or send me home with anything.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I get so sick. Like, the worst throw up sick I think I've ever been in my life. Like, the stuff coming out of my stomach looks like green NyQuil. Like,
oh my gosh,
bad.
yeah.
And so, I have to go back to the hospital. And the hot doctor actually comes and, like, picks me up and takes me back to the hospital. I remember the staff house was, like, on, like, the 3rd floor of, like, a building or something. So I'm scooting down, like, on my butt again. I remember I didn't have shoes on because he was like, why don't you have shoes on? And I was like, I don't care about shoes. It
doesn't feel like a priority right now at this
I don't
time.
care, dude. So we get back to the hospital. I am, like, kind of just, like, delirious at this point. I'm struggling, you know. I'm so dehydrated that, like, I'm crying, but there are, like, no tears. It was so strange.
It's messed up.
So they gave me fluids. They gave me some sort of medication that really helped. And then I was feeling much better the next day. There was actually a volunteer in the room adjacent to me because he had salmonella. Cusco's a tough place.
Yeah, all right.
Not Cusco specifically, but, like, the rural areas around it. It's definitely a tough place to be a volunteer from the U.S. with, like, no prior experience or exposure to any of these pathogens.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, makes sense.
Yep, definitely. So I go there, you know, I talk to him for a little bit. I'm like, all right, I'm booked to fly home, like, the next day. So I go, they, you know, bring me all my stuff. I go right from the hospital to the airport. And it's, like, early in the morning. I remember me trying to figure out how I'm gonna handle, you know, a regular size backpack and a backpacking backpack.
Yeah, because you're still just by yourself.
And a plaster cast.
Yeah.
Also, they had to cut the plaster cast open before I went on the plane because apparently your legs expand when you're in the air.
Yes.
And so if they wouldn't have cut it open, it would have been, like, squeezing.
Oh my gosh.
It would have been, like, excruciating.
Yeah.
So I've got, like, a cut open plaster cast. I'm on my crutches. I've got all this stuff. We're going into the airport. I fall. I bite it. Everyone's like, oh my god, no.
It's like you're just loaded up with stuff.
It was slick.
Like,
I slipped. I had never used crutches before this, so it was a
good.
curve.
So you had tons of experience.
Huge learning curve. So I was fine, but it was just funny, honestly. Everyone was like, oh god. It was fine. So
at this point, you're like, bring it on.
Yeah,
like, there's nothing I can't do.
Cool. So I like they get me a wheelchair at the airport, and like someone kind of like from like the airport staff like kind of like helps me through like security and like getting on the plane and those things. So I fly from Cusco directly to Miami, I think, and then I'm in Miami for the night before I fly back to home, Ohio. So I get to the Miami airport. The airport person is there. They help me get my baggage. They're pushing me around. And as soon as I get to the taxi area, they're like, bye.
Good luck.
You're on your own, my guy. And I'm like, okay. So the taxi comes and picks me up. He was a super nice guy. I think I was like I said, like 18 or 19 at the time. He's like, do you want me to go to the gas station and get you anything? Beer? Cigarettes? I'm like, you're so nice.
And yes.
But I finally get to my hotel. It was just such a challenge navigating everything with all my luggage and the crutches that I was like a newborn deer on those things.
Right.
Like, it was not good. So I finally get to my hotel room and I'm like, I am going to order a pizza. I'm going to order Pizza Hut stuffed crust pizza.
Yes.
And I do. And it comes and it's delicious. And I eat 2 pieces and I'm immediately sick again. I'm just so sick. So ill, and I'm all alone in Miami. I'm like on the phone with my mom, like, Mom, please help me.
At this point, I'd be like, you can drive. I'm in the continent now.
Yes.
Like, you will come get me, or at least that's what I'd want to say. You know?
Yeah. And I remember like going through customs, coming back. They officials were like so concerned about my cast because it was like cut open.
Yeah,
so,
like did they think you like smuggling
it and like Q-tipping it and like running it through the bomb detectors and like they're like, can you take it off? And I'm like, no, like I cannot.
I get you probably had to ask, but
right. It was so that was a whole thing. I remember I was able to like finally get into a position where I was like kind of comfortable and just like wait it out. And so I got on my flight back to Cleveland the next morning.
Was it a direct flight?
I think it was. Honestly,
no, they had you connect through Denver, and then
I honestly have no recollection of that second flight whatsoever.
Yeah, fair enough. We blocked that out.
Gone.
We blocked that stuff out.
It's totally gone. So I finally get home. It's great. I'm so happy to be home. Where everyone, speaks the same language, and my parents are there, and I can just like be home in my bed and be comfortable.
Yeah.
So super stoked to be home. I'm home for like a day, and then get sick again. Almost right away, I get stomach sick again. So I I remember my mom had like scheduled a haircut for me for that day, and I was like, no, Mom, I'm too sick. And she was like really pissed. She was like, I can't believe you're making me cancel this hair appointment. That stands out. I was like, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
My bad. But so I had to go to the hospital anyways, to get a cast like we have in the United States put on my foot and just get it like x-rayed and looked at. So I already had to go in, so they were taking off my plaster cast and putting on like the usual like wrap kind of ones that we have here. And they were like, it all looks good. Like, this is what we would have done in the US. Like, it's a bit more old school than some of like the technology we have, but they did a good job. Everything's cool. So I'm like, great. And they're like, here is this pill to swallow to help with your nausea and vomiting. Totally makes sense. So they're like, here, take this, see if it helps. It does not. So I'm in there. I'm just like in so much pain because my stomach's been cramping for so long.
Yeah.
I've just like thrown up so much. And so, long story short, after going through a bunch of tests and a bunch of specialists, like infectious disease doctors coming in, because I just come back from Peru.
Yeah, which has to be just like, so scary, because at this point, you're like, anything could happen. Like,
right, and it's just like, they're having med students come in and like look at it because it's all weird, you know what I mean? And that was not fun. But eventually, like 7 days later, maybe, I start feeling better. I'm able to eat again. And that was the end. That was the end of the horror story. Everything was fine after that. My foot healed up really well. I got my cast taken off.
Yeah.
I remember it like bothered me for a little while.
I felt like it took a while to like heal up. Like I remember shoes were a thing for a long time.
Shoes are still a thing because
which could just be the break itself and like the placement of it as you were describing it.
Yeah, the way that it healed, it kind of like calcified a little bit, like around it. So I have like a little lump on the side of like my one foot.
That's so crazy.
So like I had to get rid of a bunch of shoes, like heels especially, because they just like didn't fit anymore. And it still acts up now and again, but overall it's not something that I like have had like long-term consequences for. Mainly it's just become a really insane story to tell people.
I feel like it is an insane story and definitely classified as like a travel disaster. Like this was not like a little hiccup on your beach vacation. Like this was completely overhauled your whole plan.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't relived that story in such depth in like so many years.
Yeah, there were details I forgot.
Yeah,
it's like
same. Like it's so hazy looking back because it was just so much, and I was so young at the time that I feel like my brain just like put that in a box and kind of locked up the worst.
Oh yeah, we're so good at that. Yeah. Like you just move on, back to work, gotta do what you gotta do. Mm-hmm. But I have two very important follow-up questions. Yes. The first one is, have you played Duck, Duck, Goose after this?
I don't think so. I don't think I ever will again, honestly. I'm too afraid.
I could just see your niece and nephew. Well, probably not your nephew now because he's old.
13.
I know. He's not like, yeah, let's hang. But like, just being like, hey, Rachel, let's play. And your eyes just like, it's like pale. Yes. Like you're just like, no, not the ducks and the geese. Like I can't.
I feel like my foot's like too vulnerable now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's your playing foot. You can't take it out of the game.
I don't know. I try not to run in too tight of circles anymore,
Dang it. No more. Really, what's that other, like musical chairs or whatever?
No musical chairs.
All your running based games have really been limited.
Out the window,
And then question number 2. Did it impact the way that you see or view travel? Like, are you more nervous when you do things, or are you still, like, just excited to travel and see the world and do stuff?
Yeah, for context, the very following summer, I went to Colombia for 10 weeks. So it did not throw me off. It did not deter me. I figured this was just one of those crazy freak things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It definitely, I think, gave me... I learned a lot of things, like not things that I necessarily wanted to learn, but like how to navigate the healthcare system in another country and kind of getting an inside look at how that functions. I do have a background and a degree in public health, so that was actually like pretty interesting from like a very detached...
Not a degree at the time.
A very detached standpoint.
Yeah. But more like a real life, because you were like in school for it at the time, so it was like a real life like case study.
Yes.
And you were the case.
Yeah, it was definitely very interesting, and I continued to stay heavily involved with Amigos de las Americas for years after that, and I served on their board for a little while, so it was definitely a good story to tell nervous parents. Like, even in the worst case scenario, like I got really good care. Like the calm plan really went into effect exactly as it should have. The supervisors were great. They handled it outstandingly. So it was definitely... It was good. It was good for that. It built character.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be able to come out of something like that and be like, and everything was fine, that could very easily like reassure a nervous parent. Definitely. I mean, not that they want to think about that as a possibility, but it already happened to you, so it's taken care of.
I feel like in that world, I'm like known as the girl who broke her foot playing Duck Duck Goose in rural Peru, which is weird.
Which, now that I think about it, imagine the story that like the community tells.
I know. Oh my god, I've actually never thought about that.
I want to know, like,
so
if you're watching this from this community, please tell us if you tell the story and what you call our friend Rachel.
I would love that, actually. Or like the other like volunteer that was there. They ended up like switching her community and putting her in with a different community, I think, because she couldn't be there by herself. Yeah. So I really messed up her whole thing too.
Dang.
Sorry, Megan. But yeah.
You're the real MVP, Megan.
Yeah, for real. It was definitely a wild experience. It's a fun story to tell though, and to more directly answer your question, no, I don't feel like it has made me feel more nervous or kind of inhibited when traveling. I am fully still on board. And once you go through that, I mean, really, like, knock on wood, you probably won't have to deal with anything worse than that.
Well, I don't feel like we should have said that. Like, especially because the next, not real, but especially because the next big trip that you have coming up is your honeymoon, which, you know, we're very excited about. But I just want everybody to send you good vibes for this because obviously Rachel doesn't have a perfect track record.
Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks. David and I, my fiance David and I, were joking that we have to go for 2 weeks. So when he inevitably gets strep throat on the second day, he has time to recover and still enjoy himself.
See, that's why it's important just to plan. If you know, then you can plan.
Definitely. But I think given my experiences and his experiences, we're ready. We're ready for anything, you know?
You're ready for your life together. You're ready for any adventures.
For broken bones.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you are listening and you have a story anywhere on the spectrum from travel fail all the way up to travel disaster, we would love to hear it. So please drop it in the comments or anywhere on social media using the hashtag #TravelUnpacked. And Rachel, I just want to thank you again for rehashing that whole debacle. You know, it really is just when I say fantastical, I don't mean like,
fun, magical.
I mean like unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story.
Yeah, it was definitely a wild time, but looking back, I'm like, good for 18, 19-year-old me. You know? Like, got through it, didn't absolutely lose it somehow. Kind of impressed with my younger self, so.
No, I was always impressed with Rachel's younger self. That's why I kept her around. I was like, we're gonna be friends, and we have been ever since. So we will be back next week with more Travel Unpacked, so please be sure to tune in, and we'll be bringing you new guests and new stories. And as always, this podcast is brought to you by KHM Travel Group, a leading host agency. And if you want to learn more about that, please head to khmtravel.com. Bye!